Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I will call the meeting of the House Education Committee to order, and will, if he doesn't mind, call on Chairman Nix to open us in prayer.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings you give to us. Lord, as our pastor of the day has said this morning, to be the servant is what you're expecting, and we just pray that we would be good servants. We do the things you'd have us to that will benefit the children of Georgia. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chairman Nix. Members of the committee, if you'll open your folder, we're going to have two very quick items. First, Senate Bill 42. If this looks familiar, that's because we passed it yesterday. I'm still new at this, and I turned in the wrong copies of that. This is simply a procedural matter. There have been absolutely no changes of any kind whatsoever. I simply need us to vote this back out so that I can turn in the proper two 01 and 02 versions. So with that, Chairman Chokas. We have a motion to pass and a second on Senate Bill 42, LC 490531 by substitute. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, Senate Bill 59. If members of the committee will remember, last week, Senator Albers was here to present this bill. And to my recollection and through discussion with some members, believe that the committee exhausted all the questions they had for the senator. And we left the meeting with a question about some perspective language that we were just trying to shore up. At this time, Courtney, if you can help me. And I'm going to talk through this, and then I'm going to hand it to you guys, but I'm going to put forth an amendment on behalf of Chairman Todd Jones. So we will refer to this as the Jones Amendment. And when you all get a copy of this, we are focused on the italics language at the bottom. And I will pause, and to our members online, if you will follow with me, we are simply adding clarification on the language that reads that we would add to this bill. As used in this subsection, local charter schools means those local charter schools that meet the definition of a school under the rules adopted by the State Board of Education. So I do not believe that there were any further questions for the author. So at the appropriate time, I will offer this as an amendment. So Chair recognizes Chairman Chokas for a motion. Yeah. Hold on one second. Stand by one. Told y'all I'm still new at this. Oh, thank you, Chairman Nix. So we are working on the LC version that's in everybody's folder, 490544, and you'll notice that it's a substitute. Since Senator Albers presented this, we did remove the language in what I believe was the last section about the $25,000 being used as a stipend for facilities payment. So again, since Senator Albers and Chairman Jones are not here, I'm your best effort at presenting this appropriately. So we did remove that out. This is a substitute. Let me be clear from what we was presented last week. So I'm happy to entertain any questions before we move to the amendment, if there are any. So seeing no questions, anything online? So Chairman Chokas has moved that this bill do pass. Is there a second? There is a motion and a second that Senate Bill 59 LC 490544 by substitute do pass. Is there any discussion? At this time, I'd like to recognize Attorney Walker, who is online, to possibly suggest different language to this amendment. So Courtney, is he online to?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. I have just been provided the language of the amendment, and I wonder if the chair would consider some alternative. And the reason for this is, as the amendment is phrased, it would give me some pause regarding delegation. Essentially, this would allow the State Board of Education to provide a definition of schools rather than the General Assembly kind of retaining that. So if the purpose of this amendment is to provide that Section 5 does not apply to the college and career academies, there would be an alternative way to say that just more directly and say that this shall not be construed to include college and career academies or some language along those lines, but to basically to defer to the State Board of Education to define schools is problematic from our point of view.
Thank you, Michael. I hear what you're saying. I mean, I actually don't think we need the amendment because it's been confirmed that the college and career academies are programs and not schools. Representative Chris Irwin, do you have a thought on that? I mean, we were trying to clarify it more, but I actually believe it is clear enough as without the amendment. If the amendment makes it more problematic, I'm fine with just leaving the amendment off.
I agree with that, and the fact that it is defined and it isn't defined in the federal regulations, so we have determined it is a program.
So you would be fine without an amendment?
Without an amendment.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem and Vice Chairman Irwin. Representative Evans has a question online.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm just trying to open, I am at home now, so I'm trying to open up the bill online, and I just wanted to confirm, Chairman, what you said. So I've just opened up the bill. So this amendment, in this amendment, the local schools would not pay the charter schools the $25,000 facility fee. Is that correct? Is that what I heard?
Let me make two statements.
Okay.
I have not made a motion yet on the amendment, so we will stand down on discussion of that. As far as my other statement, yes, ma'am, this is a substitute to the bill that was presented in the committee. And yes, ma'am, in the last section, I believe it was, we removed the $25,000 stipend in there. So I appreciate you clarifying that.
Okay,
But
great. Well, and I'm scrolling through it now. What line is that in the bill?
Well, it's been removed.
So it's not struck out, it's just removed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a motion and a second that this bill do pass. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, same sign? Thank you. Motion carries. We will now, members, you should have a substitute to Senate Bill 153 that the pro tem is going to present. So I'll turn the microphone over to her.
So Senate Bill 153 does not contain any of the language that came over from the Senate, either the original language as introduced or the language that was substituted in, but it does pertain to the same issue. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so it does pertain to the same issue, and that is several state commission charter schools that do an outstanding job serving students who are either maybe at risk of dropping out, have dropped out. Some of them are incarcerated. It's a small percentage, and some of them are over age. They're over the age of what K through 12 typically serves. The issue has come up, and they all came in at various times, but the issue is sustainability. So by being state commission charter schools, the state is paying 100% of the local funding share. And which right now it's about $38 million a year. Now, these are not really just 3 schools. They're 3 schools that serve, many school systems. And the good thing about them is they serve primarily in smaller communities where it's hard to get economies of scale or efficiencies. And so by coming together, they can, students can go to different sites, maybe they work over here or they can go part-time, and they do a great job. There is a great interest statewide in expanding this model. As folks have heard about it, they're like, wow, that sounds great. We'd like to participate. The problem is it's like the dual funding that we had to address a few years ago. It's great. It's great for kids, but it's too expensive for the state to pick up all of it, and unlimited, particularly given, and you have in your packet this sheet, all school systems are required by state law to offer alternative schools. So taken to the nth degree, every school system could want to partake of this, and we would be picking up the tab 100% for each one of them, which we just can't sustain. The goal is to move these schools that exist on a sustainable path that can also be replicated around the state. That's fair to the schools from a funding model, fair to the state so that we can expand it. But number 1, number 2, and number 3 serve students well. And so this kind of started about 1.5 years ago, and you may not have heard about it, but it's been percolating. The state commission, charter commission froze the schools so they could not grow. And there, as I mentioned, there's a real demand to expand this to maybe your system, or to your region if you don't have it now. But we've got to figure out as a legislature, how are we going to expand this? How are we going to pay for it? Of course, we will pay for the QBE portion, but I would envision that what we want to move to is a model that incentivizes particularly smaller or lower property wealth school systems to participate. But I mean, not limiting any school system from participating with their students, but it has to get on it at the path. And so what the bill does, and I've given you a summary that you can go through line by line. It takes them out of the state charter school commission's purview. And in your summary, it explains that there are no other state charter schools that have local school system involvement. They're separate. They're not locally approved. These schools, and I think it's a good thing, their superintendents are involved. I mean, who can bet? I mean, I'd rather see all local charter schools more than state charter schools because I think the collaboration is better. It can fit more seamlessly within their whole framework of providing education. These just are in the wrong place. And so they're going to move over to the Department of Education. The Department of Education will get the 2% funding that currently goes to the commission. It'll end up being about $1.4 million a year. That'll go to the Department of Education specifically and explicitly to work with these schools, not to go into the general budget or anything. It's to help them in a very intensive and way. What's going to happen at the end of their charters? We will honor their charters paying the full funding until the conclusion of their charters, which for 2 of them, it would be for 2 years. For 1 of them, it would be for 3 years. Foothills would be 3 years. Mountain Ed and Coastal Plains would be for 2 years. So we have a runway. In the language that's in here, it makes it clear in section 1, we're going to study. You're going to be a part of that. study alternative education. We're going to include these schools in here because they're experts on how to do this, particularly the hardest to educate students. And it specifies it's going to happen over the next, I would hope just year, but year or two. It's going to conclude with recommendations, and we're going to take up those recommendations. And but this is a way to make it sustainable, and I would be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Courtney, are there any questions online? Okay, Representative Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would there be, what in cuts to the budget would there be to these school systems budgets?
Well, there will be no cut for 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, okay?
And then after that, we would not be paying the local funding. So that would be the cut.
Okay, so the locals would have to pick that up.
But I anticipate and I expect with this study committee that we will come up with maybe an extra weight. You know, right now there's an alternative funding weight that school systems are limited to 2.5%. You know, I think on the table will be maybe the state pays for 100% of students that are incarcerated. Maybe the state pays for, or we should, students that are over age. Maybe we waive that requirement of 2.5% alternative funding and they could get that fully at these schools. I mean, I think we're going to put everything on the table. What does it take? But don't forget, everybody's required to offer it now.
Right.
And, but
I
yes.
I have one of these schools in
Sure,
the
sure.
district, so.
And I have been speaking with the schools. In fact, we just had a meeting at 2. And there's a commitment to work with them so that they can be sustainable. But what we have now really is not
All right,
sustainable.
thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Nguyen online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Pro Tem, I do have a couple of questions. Currently, how much money are we spending each year on these state charter schools?
On these particular schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that. Well, when you say how much are we spending, the QBE we would be spending regardless of whether it was a state charter school or it was just a low, if these students were in the local school system. So I'm going to back that out. Okay,
Sure.
Representative. So currently it is 38 million.
Okay,
For
so
the local funding.
thank you, Madam Chair. And then, so under the proposed change, essentially that share that the state is paying independently of the QBE, that, like Representative Benton said, the school districts would have to find a way to make up for that.
Well, they would continue, it's what it is it's a local proxy. It's a proxy for their local funding that they pay for their other students that are in their traditional schools. We will honor that commitment for 2 or 3 years, depending on what their charter is. And actually, I can tell you, for Foothills, it'll be for the next 3 years. For the other 2, it will be for 2 years. Yes. And then at the end of that, I certainly would expect that we would have a new model so that, with the goal being that this could replicate throughout the state. There are many other systems that want to offer this. Now, how many will want to offer it when it's not free? I don't know. But I do think there will be a number that will want to replicate this model.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. I just have one final question. With these specific 3 schools, do you know what the reason was for why the school system didn't approve a local charter and why they had to go the state route instead?
So I can.
Representative Nguyen, could you state that question one more time, please? Representative Nguyen, can you hear us? And if so, could you please restate your last question?
Yeah, so my understanding is that when a school is a state charter school, it may have the reason they're a state charter school instead of a local charter school approved through the local school system is maybe they weren't able to get that approval. And as Madam Pro Tem said, it is often better when the local school system is working in tandem to approve those local charters. And so I was curious if there were any specific reasons why these three schools are state charter versus approved through local.
So I don't know the whole history, but like the one that started it all, Mountain Ed, started out as a 3-county collaborative, I guess you could call it. I don't know if you'd call it a charter school, but it was a collaborative effort in which they paid for the local share, and the state paid for the QBE. And then in 2006, they were authorized as a state board of by the State Board of Education as what's called a special school, a state charter special school. They didn't start really getting us paying for the local share until around 2013. Now, there may be a little more history that they could correct me on, but it was really more recently. And I don't know why the State Charter Commission approved them and then allowed it to replicate. I think it was just one of those things where they saw the good work that these school systems were doing and approved it, but it doesn't really fit the model. And I think there's a recognition by the State Charter Commission that it doesn't, and that it would be a better model if they were local collaboratives with, state incentives and state support.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Representative Maynor.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions. One, and I'm not sure this may be easy for them already, but the question is the July 1 implementation date going to be easy for the people to do? And the second question is, since we're transferring roles and responsibilities to the DOE, is there any sort of fiscal note that's needed?
Good questions. It will be revenue neutral because the state commission charter schools already have 2% withheld to go to the state charter commission to essentially act as their school district. That 2% will shift over to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education currently is a partner in every local charter, locally chartered school now. They are a part of that contract. It's with the local district, their governing board, and the state DOE. And the state DOE and I have talked about this. The only concern they have was how would they afford it? And that's why I moved the 2% over. And so it'll be about $1.4 million a year.
Representative Carter online.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. My question first was, I heard you name one of the schools, but what were the other 2 schools?
Yes, so it's Foothills was the original. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Mountain Ed was the original. And then there's Mountain Ed and Coastal Plains.
Okay, and I think you may have answered my question. I think what I'm hearing you saying that these collaborative state charter schools will eventually be dissolved and they will be associated with maybe like a local school. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Something to that effect? Okay.
Yes, they're associated with local school systems now. The local
Okay.
school systems superintendents primarily, I don't want to just draw a blanket statement, but primarily serve on their governing board now. And so, I mean, they, kind of something looks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. They look like, and should, I mean, I think they benefit from that local participation by the school districts or the superintendents now. But what their final appearance will be a function of what do they want and how can we as a state support them in continuing to accomplish the good work that they're doing now.
Gotcha. And just one quick other, well, kind of two quick questions, but are either one of these schools associated with, what's the school? We have the 3 schools that are tied to the military bases that, it's through, I can't think of the name of it. I should know the name of it. I can't think of it. Where the students will go to those schools and they're on military bases, but they're still a part of the public school system, and they're state charter schools. I was trying to see what's one, because I think they've changed the name, but I think my biggest concern was what is percentage of in-person versus online with these schools? That's what I'm trying to get to.
I'm going to have to confirm that. I'm seeing shaking heads. I believe you're correct on the first. And the online versus, it is, I think, primarily a blended model, and we'll let them attest to that. But they, it varies by site and it varies by the students.
And Representative Carter, we have 2 of those folks, representatives from those schools, who are going to speak to us in just a moment. And I see them nodding their heads that they will address your question. So if you'll stand by for one moment, we'll get that. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
One last question. Where you have one system that is the host system, but you have students from 10 or 15 other systems coming into that one central location, will that be a shared expense, or is that local system going to have to assume the cost of all those students?
Oh, well, no, I certainly wouldn't expect at the site that they would assume the cost for students that come from, a partner school system. I mean, that student comes from that other school system. So I
Right.
would think that they would be contributing. But, that model, I mean, this is not something new. We have examples of career academies where there are collaboratives, and several school systems come together with a collaborative model. But there's a shared expense between the state and the school system of origin that those students come from.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was not going to be a one system.
No,
That
absolutely not.
in your idea here, it would be.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And members of the committee, that appears to be all the questions. So before I recognize our 2 speakers, if you care to look at line 64, you will notice that there is no such thing as a SATE Board of Education, but there is a state board. We will get that fixed, and I will take care of that. So
And there is one other change. I'm talking with the schools, we're going to allow them to have 3%, not 2% growth in for student growth over this period of the remainder of their contract. There may be another slight change in the language. Today's just a hearing, but they're working on that. But for now, this is, I think, 99% of the bill.
And I believe our last question, Representative Wade online.
Appreciate that, Chairman, and thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. I represent a district that currently has, I know 2 of my school systems utilize Mountain Education, and it's been a great partnership. I guess I just want to confirm if I get any questions from my superintendents as they, I'm sure they're aware of this, and I've actually attempted to communicate with them just to ensure that they've heard about some of the updates. When this process begins to design, I guess, something in the next year or so, I don't want to assume it. I think it's definitely probable, but there will be an opportunity for those existing systems to be at the table to help in that design for this program to expand. And I'm 100% in favor of the legislation. I can agree with the move. I just want to make sure that those that are already a part of it will continue to be at the table to ensure that we can be prepared for funding that, or funding whatever changes occur, so that we can, but it's been a success, and in our community, especially the Lumpkin County schools that have had a direct impact and involvement with this program, but also Dawson County school system. And it also, just for folks that aren't aware of it, a lot of shared facility usage goes on. So it's maximizing some of those capital outlay dollars that have been utilized. It's been a great benefit in our area, and it serves students that, quite frankly, the night school and even Saturday schools methods help them, because we still have farming families and students that have to be have part-time jobs even as 17 and 18-year-olds. So I'm very supportive of the move. Just want to make sure we're at the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wade. Before I turn it over to our two speakers if they'll make their way to the microphone in the back, I do want to recognize Mike Long, State School Board member, who is here. And if the members of the committee would join me in welcoming him to our committee today. So Sherry and Wayne are at the microphone in the back and are going to introduce themselves and tell you their role in this process. And I'll let them decide how they're going to do that and speak to us for a few minutes, and then we can wrap up. So floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? All right. My name is Sherry Gibney Sherman, and I serve as the superintendent of Foothills Education Charter High School. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about us and what we're doing, but I want to say this before we start. We are so grateful for the meeting that we had with the two of you prior to this meeting, and we're very much at peace with the direction we're headed. And I just want to make sure everybody hears that we are very excited that we're working toward the same goal and the same mission for the state. So thank you both. We worked in partnership with Mountain Ed in 2015 to open our first site, which is at Arundel State Prison. It's a prison for women. And we worked for 6 months and got that open. And then by July 2015, Foothills was born. We were a state charter school, a commission school. We opened in January actually in August of 2015. And later that same year, we opened Burris. Burris was our second prison. And those two continue to work. And then later in 2017, we opened Phillips State Prison. So we're now continue to work in 3 state prisons. And we've awarded over 335 diplomas to prisoners. And the prisoners who get a degree from us, once they're released, they don't come back. And the traditional recidivism rate is like 40%. For our students with a degree, it's 1%. That's significant. And we continue to do that work. And at the request of the commission, the State Charter School Commission, we were asked to replicate Foothills by working with Glenn County and Candler County, and we did. And so we opened up Coastal Plains Education Charter High School, and they opened in July of 2017. And the reason they asked us to do that, because we, like others, believe that it needs to stay local. So we worked with the commission at the request of the commission, and we've got Coastal Plains up and running, and now they have 14 sites, and they have 9 more that are waiting, just as you said. And then again, at the request of the State Charter School Commission, they asked us to take over the high school portion of the Youth Challenge Program. And your caller was asking about that. The Youth Challenge Program is actually a national program. And the state of Georgia works with the National Guard. And at that time when we opened it, there were 3 sites, but now there are 2, one at Fort Gordon and one at Fort Stewart. And so we began serving those students in person in 2018, but we moved to more of a blended model where we have staff on site, staff online, and it's going very well. And those students are succeeding. Students that go there are only there for 6 months. And so we do their high school portion, but we add an extended model so we would take care of them after they finish their youth challenge obligation. So that's gone great. And then more recently, Butts County and Bibb County, they too, just like Representative Jones was alluding to, were interested in having Foothills. And we said, you know, you're just a little bit far from us, but what we will do is we'll help you replicate. So again, we worked with the commission. We have another area of the state that would like to have this model. And so we worked with Butts, and actually the superintendent sitting right here is the one that called and asked me to come down, and Bibb County, and we started the replication process. However, it got stopped a year and a half ago in January with the funding questions and wondering where to go. But we continue to serve those students with us. So now Bibb and Butts is part of Foothills. So at this moment, we have 12 partner districts. Those are school districts that you mentioned earlier, that we are in their facilities. We work with their students and their staff. And we work in 3 state prisons, 2 youth challenge locations, and we just established our first 100% virtual site. That means students only can attend virtually, and that's going great. You know, we have right now 290 students who are signed up, and they are making great progress. So right now today, we're serving like 2,300 students. And one thing that was distributed earlier was a map that shows all 3 schools, and I think that's went to everyone, as well as a 2-page summary. It needs to be updated a little bit after our meeting that we just had, but that just gives you some background of our work. Now, what we do, our task is to remove barriers to high school graduation. And if anyone has ever parented a high school child or knows a high school child, you know there are a lot of barriers, and some not of their making, you know, some that we make on them as adults. We serve as a community resource. Last night, we gave 300 shots, vaccines in our regional office in Athens, and it was fabulous just to be able to do that. We work on strengthening the social emotional learning of students, because many of our kids are quite smart and quite capable, but they need some more support so they can navigate this world. And we serve students in a way that a traditional K-12 setting just cannot do. They don't have the resources or the staff or the flexibility that we have as a charter school. We are addressing the dropout prevention issue that happens in this state, not only this state, but many states across our nation. We're not a punitive school. So when you heard alternative school, you know, a lot of times school districts have an alternative school, but it's strictly punitive. That's not us. Our kids come to us because they choose to come to us. They just need another environment where we have aggressive student support services. As a matter of fact, 30% of our budget is spent on supporting students so they can navigate the world once they leave us. We have begun developing stronger and more aggressive career pathways for our students. Tomorrow night, we're having a welding graduation where 18 of our students are getting their welding certificates, and every one of them have a job. They have a job waiting for them. And we're doing more and more work with that to make sure kids not only get their diploma, but they're ready to move on to the workforce or post-secondary. Kids choose to come to us. No one is ever assigned. We support the bill that we just got today. You know, this is a revised one, and we are just excited to work and be at the table to come up with a solution that makes this program sustainable. As we were talking with Representative Jones, we've been working for a year and a half trying to figure out a way, how can we change this funding formula? And I know we can do it. And we're just real proud to be able to be invited to the table to have that conversation. I think one of your callers earlier talked about, can we be at the table? And we were assured absolutely, not only by Representative Jones, but you too, Representative Dubnick, that we're going to be there and we're going to be part of the solution. Because we all agree that our kids need this and they deserve it regardless of where they live. And we're going to figure out a way to get this going across the state. Combined, we serve over 6,000 kids, closer to 7,000 right now. We're delivering a service that traditional K-12 schools cannot. And the current funding formula is just not sustainable. And we know that. We've been working hard on this, and looking at Lauren sitting from the commission, we've met many, many times. How can we restructure this so that it's a formula that works for everyone? So we're excited about that and be a part of the solution. And I think that's about it. But the students we serve, they need us. Make no doubt about it. And if you've worked with high school kids, you know who they are. Their families need us. If you've ever seen the face of a mother bringing the kid in, oh, thank God, somebody can help me with this. And it's just frustrating, to try to parent a teenager. And we need for all of our kids in the state of Georgia to be successful. We don't have all the answers, but we'll sure look for them and see what we can do to find a solution. And we appreciate the opportunity to work together to come up with a solution that will serve these kids. And that's what we're all about. We want to be part of the solution.
And I just want to echo your comments to the committee that you have my pledge that we will be at the table together and that we will figure this out together. And I hope the members of the committee hear the words that she's saying, that there is a problem, and I'm just using that word, and we are going to find a solution, and that we are committed to being at the table together. So with that, I thank you. And Wayne, if you want to add anything.
I won't add much. I think Sherry covered pretty much everything, and I appreciate that. With that being said, I'm Wayne Lovell, and I'm from Mountain Ed, and I represent about 2,500 students that have chosen us and are basically high school dropouts. The conversation today that we had prior to this meeting was a very productive conversation, and the assurances that we received, we can get behind the legislation, and we're willing to work in partnership and have that seat at the table, and to ensure that we are serving those students that are marginalized in most communities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And absolutely. And just for what it's worth, I do want to point out to the committee that, again, if you've noticed, we did talk about there being 3 schools. And there is a third superintendent, obviously, who just couldn't be with us today. But I, again, just want the committee to be aware of that and to understand. So at this time, seeing no other microphones lit up online or in the room, as this was a hearing only, we will, unless anyone has anything for the good of the order, seeing none, hearing none, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.